viewers. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, our viewers, and welcome to Life and Leadership Series with Apostle Olarotimi Olukola. Please, with me together today in the studio is...
Hello, my name is Isaac Emmanuel Chukwuka, and most people know me as media pastor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. So, we are going to be a little bit uncensored when it comes to this podcast, and the reasons are we want to get the truth as regarding certain matters. Mind you, majority of the things we're going to be talking about are not going to be absolute, in the sense that they are not just going to be informations that are based on permanency of a state. What do I mean by that? It means that you can have your divergent views about them, but nevertheless we are open for your opinions about matters concerning this. So basically I want to talk about the African man embracing Christianity, because personally I feel that a lot of we Africans have lost our identity as regarding our roots in the quest to embrace a Western culture and calling it Christianity. Now, I don't mean that Christianity as a culture is not alien to the African man, because definitely it means he was not born with Christianity, but I feel that there is a part of it that has been grossly misappropriated. For example, immediately a guy wears suit, it is believed that he's a pastor. You understand?
Yes, sir.
So immediately a man can speak good English, it is believed that he has good morals enough to be a leader in church and all of that. I'd like to hear your thoughts on a few of those things before I begin to ask much more direct questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
For me, like you said, there has been a whole lot of colonization to the African man and the Western world, in the sense that over time, over years, the African man have transited from becoming an African man to becoming more of likely to be a Western person, based on the advantages that come from the Western world. If you look at it, we just see the advancement in technology, advancement in lifestyle that the Western man has brought to Africa. But if you take a flip on the opposite side, you could see how it has damaged the culture of the African man. And I want to also lay emphasis on some of these things. Apart from lifestyle, let's look at the longevity of life. If you find that, you notice that an African man has the ability to live long, and not just long, but in good health. But that because of the infringement of the Western system, that life is degrading. There is a decrease in longevity of life, which has actually affected. So on both ends, I believe there's a positive side to it. There is also a negative side to it. But I believe that the African man have lost, to a very large extent, have lost its originality because of the infringement of the Western.
I'd like to ask you, do you think that Africa is still being colonized today by the Western world?
Africa is still under the colonization of the Western world, not by physical practice, but by mental construct. What I mean by that is that they have infringed, or they have gotten access to our mind, the mind of an African man. An African man does not think like an African again. He thinks like more of a Western person. That is why when cultural activities are being brought up, you see people becoming resentive about it. They are not giving attention to it. Let's say, for example, when I was in school, there existing we call cultural dance, where they play native songs, playing native drum, and then dancing to it. You find that a lot of us, when that group comes, people in quotes think they are becoming more of a native person, and we are put it now. Let's say, for even if they are Christian, as a Christian setting, they now seem to be a backslider because you play native drum. For me, I believe colonization is still going on in Africa, but it's more of a mind thing, and it took a long while for them to come to this point. You've said something, and also other people have said something, that the Western don't need to come to Nigeria, they don't need to come to Africa to colonize Africa again. They have done it by the mind construct. They now tell you that living in Nigeria or living in Africa has a lot of disadvantages to you more than when you go Africa. So they believe when you leave Africa to outside, you are more at advantage than when you stay in Africa. They tell you that the things that come from Africa is not quality enough to sustain you. So you need to upgrade by maybe taking what.
I want to talk more on that. Yeah. I want you to just stress more on that.
Yes.
For example, I heard somebody one time talking about water, right? Particular drink by so, and it was actually a celebrity. So he was talking about water, and he said, I bought this bottled water for so amount of dollars abroad, as though the fact you bought that water from there has more health than the water you take from Africa. And I think before you continue, I just want to maybe steer something that wise. Now, so you see that you don't seem to be wealthy in Africa because you have land. Yeah, that's a change of idea. You seem to be wealthy because you can buy cars, import cars, and all of that. You don't seem to be brilliant because you have history, because you can talk about the history of the African man, or because you can possibly develop things from African soil. You seem to be intelligent because you can press computers. You don't seem to have a good sense of reasoning when it comes to moral code and values until you possibly can tell that you imported that kind of knowledge from somebody else. In fact, I personally think it has affected our idea of Christianity. Yes. For example, what great men of God who possibly had the records of greater miracles as recorded in history than what we have coming from the Western world. And at a point, there was this particular book, very popular book about what God used great men to do. Yes. None of that. I will not mention the name for the sake of certain things. All right. But at a point, I started asking myself, within that time, there were certain African men of God. In fact, some of these men of God came to Africa to meet them. Yes. But there was no record of that. Everything just concerned the whiteness of the skin. And so I started asking questions. And I discovered that even in the writing, this is the same thing that happens in the Bible, where the stories of particular people they are taken. For example, I read the story of Yusuf. I've forgotten the full name. Chaval Yusuf. He was a Lebanese who died in the year 1877. I was born in 1877. 3 months after his death, light was coming out of his grave. But question, you can't find that in the record of God's saying. You won't find that. It's not the, I'm sorry. No, see, you won't find that story there. So much so that from the villages he was, the light, that the information spread so much so that after he was dead and buried, almost 50 years later, a woman will go to his grave site where the church was to pray. And then somebody came to pray with her. The son mistakenly took a photo of the woman and the person, only for them to go back and discover that it was actually the man. And some of you say it's not the one. Moses and Elijah are died, but they met Jesus and all of that. So I think that it has infringed even on the realities of scripture. Somehow, personally, I don't believe that 6 books. My reasons are very clear. My claims are always very clear on that. We have 66 books because it's the King James. That's 66 books. We are books that we are limited to those who are under the authority of King James. King James is not a biblical identity. He was a king that ruled that empire, and so called for bishops from the areas of his allies to come to canonize the Bible. And I can tell you, stories are removed. A lot of stories that if you still read about have potency to change a whole lot of things. So what do you have to say in that wise?
Okay, like we're talking about Christianity and the Western the Western world. And like you said, the Western world truly has done they have done good. I think I have to commend them for that, because they brought Christianity to Africa, and we saw the reason why they got. Actually, it came from different reasons why Christianity came into Africa. But as time goes on, and I think as things goes by, the people who are now bringing the culture of Christianity started contaminating actually the Christianity, the main content of why Christianity came. Because I believe that the first people that came, they may have their own view, but I believe it was out of zeal, most of them out of the burden to liberate Africa. That was why some of them got Christianity, while others had their own view on that. And so it has actually affected Christianity. I think it was my dad that was talking about, I don't know whether, I think this is in scripture, people are still contending whether Jesus was an African or Jesus was a white man. And there was a story, I think there was also a part of the scripture where the part where Jesus actually played with cheats. We are not captured in scriptures. And there are other things. Why? Because if they know that if they put those content,
for example, he stayed in Africa, in Egypt for years, and all the story about that, no story about that
was captured, because they just wanted to remove Africa from the picture of the worldview of what brought about the whole life of Jesus. Like you said, the life of Jesus, the morality of Jesus, and his ability to be able to be exceptional in his life as growing, was in Egypt. Because when he was born, like you taught us, when he was born, when he was looking for him, he was being picked, and then they took him to Egypt, and he stayed for a very long period of time. And in the scriptures, so when he came back, the first instant or the first thing that played out was him in the temple, and he was dialoguing with professors, and what he was talking about was not just inspiration. Yes, it was what he learned. He saw knowledge, he saw magic. So they saw technology. They took that part out of just to make Africa not to be important to say. And so I believe they have done a lot to Africa. You look at it now. As a man of God, if you don't go to the Western world, you are not being considered as a man of God who is nowhere, because you have not traveled abroad. If you don't have church abroad, it's a problem. And you believe that if you have white men in your church, you are doing so much. like if there's no white man in your church, if your church is to a certain level, you are not doing well. And so they believe if a light-skinned man is around you, it looks as if you are special.
Some of them, I snap you right and all of that.
As if something special is happening in your life. But that's not actually. We are both the white and the black. The Lord says God that created both the white, it's God that made both. And so that ideology has entered Christianity, and now it is creating demarcation, it's creating discrimination in the body of Christ. And so a lot of knowledge, a lot of thoughts, a lot of body of knowledge is now affecting the real Christianity, the real lifestyle of a believer. And so, like I said, especially for the men of God, I truly think for the men of God, if some certain things are not in connection to the Western world, we don't see it to be the right thing. When we spoke about the kind of thing that the African men of God did, in the person of President Aosa, Ayo Babalola, Obadere Crowder,
Reverend Father Tansi, who was born in 1904, and in fact he was canonized also, meaning he was called the saint. That was when Anglo and Catholic needed to enter into Africa, to Nigeria. It happened in Anambra State, or I think Oba in Anambra State or something like that. Based on history.
And all these men, they did great and mighty things, but the Western world does not create room where we can celebrate those people. They are introducing their own people, and I don't really think that's how it's supposed to be.
But I think also Africa too has its own problem, because if we do not celebrate our own, if we do not keep our records, then I think that other people's records will become our record. Yes. Now I remember that when we are talking about records, one of the reasons why I keep records was because having done a study, something came to my heart at some point. I discovered that I discovered that it is those who buy the pen that can write history. For example, we tell you Mongo Park discover River Niger. My dear people, we are beating them. Who are people that carried you on that? There's this stretcher. Who carried you there? No, the truth is this. I think the way we are communicating history is still the way the Jewish tradition is from generation to generation. So a father tells his children tells his children, and there are reasons why they did not write it. Some did not write it because they wrote it wrong hands. It could enter into wrong hands and they could manipulate it.
Yes.
But at some point, I felt that, permit me to say, some materials, for example, the Benin Kingdom, the majority of the artifacts and the records were destroyed. And who destroyed these records? Now, please, I am not anti-Western. I love humanity. But I feel that for everything to be equal, everybody needs to first come to the realization of who they are, then sit on the table of decision. That's the truth. So, most of the records, the terracotta, all of that, can you imagine if the Benin man wants to find himself now? He has to travel to the what do you call it? To the museum. In fact, recently there was a drag on a man who wrote the story, who wrote one of the powerful stories that formed the movie Wakanda. Very funny information. The man, in order to make that story go viral, had to sell the story to a Western system. But the man said it was better people came to their awareness first, because they have the reach, they have the awareness. And now I'd like to ask, is there a problem from the African that has made this? Because the truth, I don't believe somebody else will infringe on your rights without your permission, whether directly or indirectly. Are there things the African as a person has as a problem that has made these things possible? And how do you think they can be corrected?
I think there are faults from the African man when it comes to the colonization of Africa. First, I would say is ignorance. The African man was totally ignorant and naive at the early stage when the Western world came to Africa. And I think one of the ways it played out was when they brought education. When they brought formal education, the African man was like, that is it, freedom has come, our Messiah is here. And then that was a way to certain knowledge. In fact, in areas like medicine, for example, you spoke about how some of these products they bring in have tampered with the lifespan of human or the African man. For example, we know that before Africans go to school, then they eat apple with a lot of vegetables. For some of you who don't know what apple is, processed cassava, but it have a lot of vegetables. Some are bitter, some are nice, and you hardly discover people taking tablets then. In fact, then I will remember our grandmother, that would be my mother's mother. When you come to the village and something cuts you, she just goes to somewhere, plucks the leaves, and is up. An average African woman now, wife does not know what it means to have a garden. Some of you, your parents have gardens now, right? The parents have gardens, they will have most of these things you're going to buy in the market, they have a way they call it, but you hardly see it there. Are we together? So I think, in fact, I think it was recently I and my wife were doing a survey. We discovered that we were having issues around our teeth. And so it was then we started the study on that. We found a video by Pastor Chris, Reverend Chris Oyakiloni, where he talked about the presence of a particular chemical on the close-up. And to be very sincere, we had to take the leap of faith to change our close-up, only for us to discover that we will not have lost those teeth we had to get out and all of that. So I think, why to the African man, you don't need close-up, you just need your salt and your charcoal. Things that are gotten from the everyday effect. How about your chewing stick, your palm, whatever, which you create that. So many of us lose our identity in the idea to digitalize everything. So we lose the very essence that keeps the African man living long. Almost every food is processed. Now, I don't want to call names, but now when you're going for shopping, you hardly see cocoyams, you hardly see. So you see people still staying much more in the malls. How can somebody pass
farm-raised sweet potatoes to go into a shopping mall to buy packaged sweet potatoes. So you see that there is already a problem of us removing life from the idea of functionality to identity. What do I mean by that? We are no more engaging life from the aspect of the functional results. We are now engaging life based on what? Identity and what? So a man will rather buy a car of 100 million and own a land or own lands in the same words. So once you are asking, are you rich? You can see, if you see a man simple and possibly just looking as simple as it can be, sorry please, yet having lands, you don't see him as somebody until he has convoy escorting him. Yes. What do you need to add to that?
Like you said, I think it's just the whole mindset, it's just the whole mind shift where they position what the how do I put it now? What they envision to be success to us. Because like you said, now cars are preferred to be an indication of success than owning a land. And having a light skin is considered to be looking fresh than having a black skin like an African. That is beautiful. You know, now even your hair as a woman, you have to now remove your hair another hair, your head another. Your eyelids now is no more your eyelids. You need to fix an extra eyelid just to look. Your lips, which we are being created, and as an African person, some have dark lips. Now you have to apply something just to have, like you said, a sense of identity that you are doing or you're doing well. And African, your clothes now, the clothes is just, do you understand? Now we are more concerned with branded clothes than the African clothes. I think, like you said, so this whole mindset thing, this whole giving us a perspective of what life is, or giving us a sense of what it means to come to a point of becoming relevant by shifting our mind from the original thing which we have, like you said. You know, let me put it this way: if you go to a school, like students, like let me say pupils. Now, if you see a child eating apple and soup, and see a child eating indomie, like you can literally support the parents of that thing. In fact, in those sense of these people, they are poor. Why? Because they are eating fufu and soup. The same thing. We went to an eatery. I remember years ago, we went to an eatery. I took our team, and so a lady was among us. And so when we got there, I asked, "What will you take?" She said she will eat rice and chicken. So I ordered fufu and soup. So when we got it, now the thing was that bad that lady could never finish the rice just because she wanted to look okay. I collected the rice after eating and I finished everything. So I think there is an identity crisis first. Now, once somebody just travels abroad, I'm not joking, I'm not downplaying that journey. It's no joke. So let you know, look as if maybe because I've not traveled abroad yet, it's looking bad. But immediately you see somebody with a cardigan and a chin, you see you are like, you see snow, we are succeeded. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Unfortunately, there is an identity crisis. And until the African man realizes himself, there's a problem. And permit me to even go back to our community. Some of our kings are not helping matters. Some of our kings are becoming more than trying to catch up with their generation that is not in. Do you understand? Yes. You know, thereby reducing the power and the authenticity of the African identity. Yes. And I think to a very large extent, if we help, even as a church. Now, the fact that we go on corporate attire does not mean anything different. Yeah. It's beyond dressing, because if you see a good clothes, you can go for it. It's not bad. But it's about not losing yourself or valuing yourself by another man's culture. Yes. Now, I always tell my people, sometimes when some people meet me and say, I cannot speak English well, I say, but you can speak your language better than me. So you can speak something. Can speak something. So most times, even in our school of transformation, I don't mark the command of English and the whole phonetic stuff. I try to look for the virtue
and the presentation of this person. Because one of the greatest things we have also lost in the quest for these things to come relevant, in fact, even myself, because I believe I can't speak my language. Like, wow, like, I can speak my mother's language. So my mother's and I can hear it, but I'm sorry. And it's not, I'm not saying it's okay. In our system, yes, we try not to allow ethnicity to come in, but at least at basic level, as a child, you should be able to speak the language of the roots you come out from. Yes. Because in the end, the gospel is supposed to be Jesus interpreted in the dialect of those people. So am I saying that we don't come to central points where we communicate? Now, so much so that right now, a lot of things have been affected by this. You see, a sermon, you find people teaching you to be more European than being a Christian. Yes, like, becoming more diplomatic. Yes, than being a Christian. You see the line. So you're taught human, and that's why we have a school for that. Right? Yes. The school of transformation is not supposed to make you more European, is for self-identity. I remember when we talked about character development, and I told you that there is neither black nor white. What is white here could be black here, what is black here could be white here. Yes. It's about identity discovery, clarity of identity. And I think just to wrap it up, because the time this series will still come on and we'll have other people coming, yes, I'd like to hear your final note to someone out there who may be watching this and really wants to explore much more on this idea.
Okay, first of all, I will say that the first thing, which is very important when it comes to dealing with this whole colonization and being able to come out of it, is, like you said, identity, like being able to find who you are. And I want to really take us back to a very popular narrative our father gave us, Father in the Lord, like it's an opportunity to sit with him, and he gave us 5 pillars for you to be able to stand out, or to be able to come to a point of mastery of who you are. And then he used the 5 fingers to create that narrative for us, or that narration for us. It was first, you must be able to discover God for yourself. You must be able to discover purpose. You must be able to find a teaching priest. You must be able to discover a covenant relationship. And last but not the least, you must be able to understand seasons. And so if you must come out of this whole stereotype of colonization, whether you mind activity based or whatever, you must be able to find who you are. And you cannot find who you are as a Christian, as an African man, without understanding who created you. Because I believe the whole thing is that we have lost track of who is or who created us, and from that point we lost track. For example, if I am made, if I'm created in the image and likeness of God, it simply means God created me, and God knows the way I think of who I am, or the reason why I'm being created. And so if I must be able to come from that point of colonization, I must be able to go back to God and ask God, why was I created? What was the reason why you made me here? I think from there, you can be able to discover who you are, and then know what, like you always used to tell us, you said, I may not know everything I want to become, but I know what I don't want to become. So I think at that point, if you can be able to understand what you don't want, what you don't need in your life, from there, you can begin to come out of colonization. And it's true that colonization takes a long process. It is you now trying to unlearn the things you have learned, and it will take you a lot of things. It will take you time. It will take you to get a teacher, someone who can be able to mentor you to go through that same circle. If it took you 20 years to go through the circle of being colonized or whatever, it also have to take you a longer process also to be able to unlearn and then come out of that process. Because whether you like it or not, if you are still living in that mental colonization, whether you like it or not, you are still within the cage of the Western world, or you are still within the cage of the colonization. And so, like I would say, go for knowledge, go for right knowledge. There are knowledge that will help to come out of it. And then most importantly, get people or get systems that can help you do. Like what we are doing now, it is shaping the life of someone. There's someone out there who is in that image, and this particular thing or this particular video is doing something in your mind. It's creating a narrative It's helping you to change your thought pattern of what colonization is and how to come out of it. Like we say, we are not against the Western world. I'm not against it. I believe that one day I will travel abroad and I will see good things. But what we are saying is that what effect it is playing out in the African map is what we are against. And think to this area.
Wow, thank you very much. On the final note, I'd like to state very clearly, how comes you see the saxophone as a worship instrument for God, yet you see the Igbo flute as demonic? How comes you see a drum beating the pedal and you think it's good, and then you see the local drum or the talking drum as demonic? Now, if that sound too, you see it calls spirits and demons, how sure are you that you are not calling also a spirit? The problem is not in the tool, it's in the mind that plays. And what do I mean? The real loss of worth is in the loss of identity. If you are lost in your identity, you'll be like a ship in the midst of a big ocean, tossed with every wind, yet not finding direction. Now, I leave this to you out there. You may choose to accept what we are saying right now, or you may choose to fool yourself forever. It's still a choice, and life is a product of the outcome of our choices.
Yes,
when all I'm saying that when Jesus died for you, he did not just die to get you to heaven.
Yes,
he died so that you could discover who you are in Christ. It's not a mistake God created you and put you in Africa. In the next episode, we are going to be sharing about how the invasion plans of mineral resources and migration effect, or what I'll call slave trading, has affected the African man. You know, the taking of the resources, and then how many people are being slave traded unknowingly. The former chains were in the foot, on your foot, or the chains right now are where? On your mind. And a lot of us are going out there to study what our fathers have cured before. A lot of us are going out. I'm talking to those in medicine. Are you shocked that you go through 8 years and not for once do you know a plant that can help you treat the sickness? Does it make sense? Does it make sense that you're a pharmacist? Does it make sense that you're a pharmacist and you don't know one plant, yet you don't know how to harness the power in ginger to cure a sickness ginger can cure? The first thing that comes to your mind is this phosphate. Who gave you those names? We call it potash. They give it calcium. I'm trying to tell you,
yes, sir.
Sometimes the ambiguity of the name just removes the knowledge in it. Some people have traded. You know, one time somebody asked me, if I'm sick, can I take herbs? So the person feels that when he takes tablets, he's righteous. When he takes herbs, he's demonic. There's a difference. Alright, so in this light, we want to say thank you very much for being on this wonderful show.
Thank you, sir.
And we look forward to having everyone who has been blessed by this send us a comment, like, and also share. And much more, go do your own research so that you will not be among the multitude, but will be one that lives your life with identity. See you next time. As you know, we always drop videos on Wednesdays and on Saturdays. You do get blessed. Have a blessed day. Remember, it's life and leadership matters. See you next time. Thank you. Thank you.